Good afternoon, and welcome to our first practical ideas for growth in 2022. Really excited to kick off the new year, and we're actually going to do a little bit of role reversal. I'm going to have Sarah, who's usually our host, join us as a guest today. So, welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
As I said, we're switching up a little bit for our first practical ideas for growth, and we want to get Sarah's perspective and talk about what the new year holds for the accounting profession. Look, there's no denying that the past 2 years have been. We look at that as a lot of opportunity for firms and professionals to grow and evolve. But while some of these disruptions are related to the pandemic, have accelerated changes that were already anticipated for the profession, others have created new opportunities for firms to jump into the future. But when we talk about predictions and what you're expecting to see in 2022, it's really difficult to have that conversation without you addressing what are the three underlying issues that are going to support the predictions you're seeing. So let's just kind of jump into some of those big overarching issues. And first up, we talk about this a lot, is the graying of geographic boundaries. And some firms have already jumped on this opportunity with the rise in remote work. But Sarah, where is this trend going to go in 2022? And how can firms make the most of leveraging that opportunity?
Yeah, I don't know where the trend is going to go. And I don't think it's so much of a trend as a representation of the environment in which we're just living in today and working in, probably more importantly. And so when I talk about this, and this is a favorite term that I have over the last year, what I'm really referring to is this transition of the entire world to remote working, but not just remote working. There's an impact to where people work and how people do business, and there's remote business too. Look, we've been a virtual business for now almost 11 years, and there's plenty more that have been out there for longer, right? But it takes clients a while to realize that they don't have to be in the same city to work with you. And it takes the right partners, obviously, to realize that too. Not everybody can work from remote. I know everybody is and has through COVID, but we're not all built and suited to do that. But there is a reality that a lot of business can be done and you don't have to be in a local market. So when we think about what's the impact that's having, when we talk about the graying of geographic boundaries, what I'm really referring to is this shift in mindset of being able to move towards not just looking locally for your business. And conversely, buyers aren't just looking locally for providers. They're expanding out, and those borders, those geographic borders that have been a heavy part of how many firms market and focus, is absolutely great. And there's more employees that are working more remotely, and there's more clients they're bringing on board that aren't sitting in that traditional geographic metro marketplace that they might serve or where their office is located.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I think firms had always thought before COVID that, oh, man, I'd love to get into X market because there's so many more, I don't know, oil refineries. And it's a shame that it took a pandemic to do that. But that's why we say opportunities, right? This isn't an obstacle. This is a huge opportunity to grow your revenue. You talk a lot about people and with the remote aspect of work. And I think, COVID has brought a lot of this back. The pandemic has brought a lot of our strategy back to focusing on the people as humans during this situation. And that ties into another overarching issue, which is the rising influence that business to consumer B2C strategies, which is relatively new to accounting and professional services, but it's really rapidly impacting how we do business and actually how we go to market. So how is this going to alter that B2B, that business to business approach that so many firms and professionals are accustomed to?
I think a lot of it comes down to access to information and interaction with their clients, and what we refer to a lot as the experience that the client's going to have internally with an organization when they're working with them or engaging with them. And so much of the B2C environment is, one click pay, so one click invoicing. It's being able to access certain information without having to jump through a bunch of hoops around it. It's just being able to communicate anytime, anywhere, right? Online chat and things like that. And so we are starting to see already that that is filtering into expectations. And this isn't, some of this is COVID, but I'll be honest and say that some of this is a shift in what various generations coming up that are now buyers, millennials, and even Gen Zs want. Not to say that that's not influenced by B2C, it absolutely is. But they kind of go hand in hand, right? They've grown up with some of this stuff. This is natural to them. Whereas, you have, Gen X or even, boomers still in those decision-making seats. They do expect it. That influence has come from B2C. It was not as innate in their nature. But, it's, for some of them, it's less important. But for your next set of buyers, your millennials and your Gen Zs, they care a great deal about this. And they don't have the patience to not deal with it. And so that will become more and more important as you're interacting with your clients, that you have those things figured out, because there's nothing worse than having an okay provider and having a very frustrating experience trying to do something like pay your invoice.
Yeah, it's funny. A previous position before I joined Innovatus, when we did a rebrand, I had to fight tooth and nail to get fax numbers taken off of the business cards. And you would have thought that I was just, building a mountain. And it's important because, as you're saying, with the rising generational change, that's what the next generation is used to. And it shows that you're in touch, right? You have to deliver services and communicate the way that your consumers and clients are, which tees us up for the third overarching issue. And we could talk pretty much every day through the end of the year about this because it impacts everything. But I think the past 2 years have really elevated and forced the hand. But technology, technology, technology. And this goes beyond, like I was mentioning, the rise in remote connectivity many firms were thrown into when they had to leave their offices. So, again, I know we can talk about this forever, but real quick, how is technology going to shape what's happening in 2022?
Well, it is shaping. It's already shaping. It's shaping that experience that we just talked about. But when it comes to marketing, there is a massive tech stack that firms are using today. And technology is such an important part of marketing. It's not the only component, right? And I'm not sitting here advocating saying the only part of your strategy is digital, but it's probably 3/4 of your strategy and a big part of brand awareness building, being present and available, getting the right information to do the right marketing, and segment and do a bunch of other things. But it's such a big portion. But I think for a lot of our marketing departments too, that are growing and expanding significantly to support their firms, that technology is playing a really big role and also helping them create capacity to be able to be focused on the right things, and serve their firms in the right way. And so if you aren't paying attention to what's going on in the technology, how you're using it within your marketing department, there are so many evolutions. If you are still posting your social media manually, please call us. There are a million different tools out there. And I'm not just talking about, some of the scheduling platforms. Sure, Facebook gives you some of that stuff in there, but there's a whole robust world of capabilities out there that can provide a lot of insight and help you do what you do even better, bring even more value to some of that. And so I think that technology is just an underpinning, right? And it has been for years, but I think we're finally starting to see, and as a result of COVID, the adoption of digital went through the roof after 2021. Our growth surveys showed huge jumps, major investments into technology. Even CRM is a big piece of that investment, and that's been a hornet's nest for years in this profession. Really has been, but excited by the conversations that are being had around data and contact information, and firms, I think, finally maybe understanding the value of having that in the role that CRM can play in helping facilitate that client experience and facilitate some of those other things.
And one of the things in the accounting profession, we know time and the hour is so important, right? And just leveraging that technology from an automation, freeing up that capacity is just huge. You can't
Yeah.
put a dollar amount on it, but it's, figuratively, it's huge. So, okay, you've done a great job of setting up the three overarching issues that are going to be impacting your predictions. So let's just jump right into those. And the first one, look, training and development, we know, especially in the professional services sector, profession with accounting, it can't be a check the box last minute CPE rush the last 3 weeks of December. So talk about prediction number one, upskilling the entire team.
Yeah, and the AICP has been talking about this for years, right? The upskilling of talent, especially at that mid level, and that hasn't changed. But there's so many areas of upskilling. I think that as firms evolve, many firms are realizing that there are really different roles for people, and there are going to be more client-facing individuals, more what we would call grinders, right? That get the work done. These might be some of your part-time workers that aren't interfacing as directly with the client, may not be facilitating that relationship. And so part of the upskilling for those people that are going to be more client facing or on that path to be client facing are going to be client service skills. And that's everything from what we would call soft skills around communication and management to just emotional intelligence and empathy and a lot of these other things. And you might look at this and go, well, some of this is innate. And I would say some of it is, but a lot of it can actually be taught, and should be taught. And we're not teaching it. We're not taking the time. We're so worried about the technical skills, and we forget the rest. And then we get frustrated when people don't have the skills, and we're like, oh, well, they're just not going to make it. They're going to permanently be here. Or they get to a fairly senior level in their organization and they're like, oh, you got to figure this out in a year, right? And now we don't have the time to have them really evolve in some of that. And so when we talk about upskilling, this isn't just about sales skills. A foundation of that is how do we communicate with clients? How do we have good conversations? How do we build relationships with them? And if for the generation that's listening to this and says, well, I just figured it out, great, good for you. This next generation may not. And what if we gave them the tools sooner and they figured it out sooner? How valuable would that be to your organization? So we've got to take the time to teach people some of those things, and that's got to be part of their development. And it can't wait until they're almost ready to become a partner, and already super busy to try to figure that out. We've got to do it way earlier and see what their capabilities are, because I think people might actually surprise you in their response and abilities for some.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that because that career progression, that continuous learning, it is evolving. And we like to always say, I've always said every position I've been in, being in marketing, everybody in an organization is an ambassador of that organization and has an opportunity to expand their exposure and brand. So speaking of brand, I'm going to skip over and come back to this, but employer brand. And I know you just wrote a blog about that, so you can check it out on the website. But employer brand has become probably more important than ever. And why is that?
Yeah. Well, it's always been important, but I would say that obviously staffing is the number one problem, and staffing shortages are the number one problem in the profession. And we're seeing this again outside of the accounting profession as well. And we've known this was coming for decades. The AICPA has been talking about the data. They've been sharing the numbers of entry-level graduates. We're watching people, graduate but not get, their CPA license, right? It's been an ongoing issue. So to say that this is a surprise would mean that we were just not listening to the information. That doesn't change the painful fact that it's a massive issue, and it's changing how firms operate. And as a result of that, it used to be that only the large firms would do continuous recruiting, and they really focused on that employer brand. And now that's not the case. Even some of the smallest firms in the market really need to have somebody dedicated to doing this to even fill a handful of positions a year that they might need. They can't wait to just post a job when they have something available. They really have to be focused on how do we get out there? How do we build some brand awareness for our company? Even hiring remote staff. I was on a call yesterday and we were talking about remote staff and with one of the providers, and they were saying, well, once they're really excited about the position, then we can negotiate a couple of these things, right? And it's not any different than hiring an employee. We still have to sell our firm at the end of the day. And if we are bringing on remote employees, whether we're outsourcing that, whether it's part-time and we're using one of the US-based operations that does some of that work, or we're hiring our own contractors, we still got to sell them at the end of the day, right?
Right.
in the work in our company that we're doing. And so that employer brand has become critical. And for at least a lot of the clients we work with, that is a carve out of what where marketing and HR have always intersected, but a heavy amount of strategy around that. It's not accidental to have a good employer brand out there, and the decision making, the brand awareness building, the things that are being done are all in an effort to raise the profile of the firm.
Yeah, I like that you use the word accidental because, as you said, none of these should be surprises to anybody, but they are definitely no longer you can't have accidental success with these.
Mhm.
They have to be part of your continuous day-to-day strategy.
You can always have accidental success. It doesn't mean it'll continue, but yes, it'll be rare today that I think that a firm will land on accidental success
Yeah,
when it comes to staffing.
you talked a lot about B2C earlier in the um client experience. Another one of your predictions to watch for this year.
I just think that a lot of what we talked about before in how are we paying attention to that? How are we improving the experience of clients to be able to work with us? Something as simple as being able to access our invoices online or being able to pay online is super helpful. And I say that like a little bit tongue in cheek because a lot of firms do that. And there's a lot of firms that don't. Even how you pay your vendors. Are you still sending checks? Are you still handwriting a check? Are you mailing a check? Are you paying ACH? So even some of those things can make a huge impact on the experience. We're seeing more and more client portals pop up. I think we'll continue to see that, not just client portals, but like these centralized landing pages where there's a lot more information and access to all the technology, more directive communication to clients as well. So much more strategy around what is the experience we're creating, and conversely, what's the journey that those people are taking within our firms.
Yeah, a topic that we'll continue to talk about throughout the year because there's so many avenues to go down. We got two more real quick, and one of them is pricing, which I don't want to sell short because sell short, no pun intended, huge topic. But we just did a great practical ideas for growth at the end of December, which is on our social pages and our YouTube video. Any quick thoughts on pricing, or do you want to skip over and
Oh gosh, we did do a great session on pricing. I think what I would say around pricing is that along with all the other things we talked about too, that is one of the things that has that B2C influence heavily is pricing strategies. But more importantly, it's not just being influenced by that, it's being influenced by the changing structure for firms, right? As they outsource, as they bring in other talent, as they use technology to create capacity in their firm, hours no longer reflect what's being done. They haven't for a while, by the way. I'm not an advocate of billing by the hour, but I think that firms are finally seeing that, oh my gosh, if I'm now more effective at what I'm doing, it's taking less time. Now I'm losing money if that's how I bill. Instead of looking at pricing in a flat fee manner or advanced pricing or something else. And so I do believe that we are going to see more firms have not just conversations, but take action around this, even small steps in action where we pull it into a particular line of business or service or starting with new clients or something like that, where they can really figure this out and try out this new model.
And it's really funny. Our fifth prediction that we're watching and what's going to shape 2022, really everything you talked about supports this, which is how firms are going to approach their marketing. And all these things are going to support that.
They are, and I think a lot of it is, a lot of what we're seeing is we're all inundated. We're all busier than we want to be. We're all drained to some level from the past couple of years, and so part of success in marketing will be really knowing what people want to hear and care about, and simple things like not taking a list of 3,000 people and mailing them all the same thing when they don't care. If you're mailing something to somebody that needs an audit, they don't care about tax, right? Maybe they don't even need to file a tax return, not on an individual level in a corporate. Maybe they're a nonprofit, right, or something. Or maybe they're unique and they're special in the world. I don't know. But if you're emailing about something they don't care about, all they're going to do is hit delete. They're just going to get frustrated. We've seen, massive engagement with firms related to to some of that. So, making shifts in that, being able to sometimes personalize, or what I like to better say is segment, right? Get them the information that matters to them most and let them choose, right? And then dig in on that and know what it is. And our goal is always engagement, right? It's less about how many people are we reaching. There's some importance to that, but I'd rather see higher engagement of a smaller group than the reverse of something any day of the week. So
Yeah, and I love that you just summed it up perfectly. It all goes back to the human, the person. It's that experiential accounting experience. And look, we said this for years, especially now with all these evolutions. If you're not doing this as a firm or a professional, another firm down the street is rapidly taking on to these trends. And if they
mhm.
don't get it from you, they're going to get it from your competitor down the street. So, Sarah, thanks so much. I'm going to turn it back to you to take us home.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Christian, for turning the books on me and interviewing me today. It was a nice change of pace, but we are excited to kick off the year. So please continue to listen or read to our practical ideas for growth. If you have ideas or suggestions, comment here. We'd love to add it to our schedule for 2022.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
All right.